Hi there, you're welcome to another math class. Today we'll be looking at Introduction to Fraction. Introduction to Fraction. What is fraction? Maybe we've heard about this word before, but don't you worry, today we're going to learn a lot about fraction. Fraction simply means part of a whole, part of something, part of the full thing, part of the complete thing. Now, if you have anything that is considered complete or full, and then something is taken out of it, that part that is taken out of it is a fraction of the whole thing. Okay? Even the remaining part is also a fraction because it's no longer complete. First, let's look at this example here. Look at this rectangle that we have on the board, this shape here on the board. Okay, let's go back to the very beginning. Okay, let me just clean everything up. Now, assuming we have this rectangle, all right? This is a complete rectangle. It's a full shape. So this complete rectangle, if they ask you how many rectangles you have, you will say it's one, right? Because it's one whole. It's a full rectangle. It's a complete rectangle. Now, assuming we share this rectangle into two parts. Now, let's look at the shaded portion. Okay? Now, we have shared this rectangle into two parts. If you look at the shaded part, it is no longer one. Neither is the unshaded part. None of these two parts now is whole or one. No. Because something has been taken out of the complete rectangle. This shaded part has been removed from the complete rectangle. So if they ask you to show this shaded portion, this is how it's going to be seen. Remember, this shaded part is one part and this is one part now. But the two parts combine to form the one that is complete. Now, if you ask me, okay, the whole rectangle now has been shared into two parts. Remember, we said the rectangle is one whole, right? Two parts equal to one whole, so that you understand what I'm trying to explain. Remember, we started it with one whole rectangle, a complete rectangle. Now that one whole rectangle has been shared into two parts. It has been split into two parts. So the two parts is equal to the one whole. Now try and get where we are going. Now these two parts that it has been shared into, none of them is complete. None of them is one whole. If you want to show this shaded part, for instance, you cannot call this shaded part one. This shaded part is one part out of two parts. The shaded part is one part out of the two parts. And it is written like this. You have one on top with a short horizontal line in the middle, and then the two is below. This is how fractions are represented. They are represented with one number at the top and separated from the bottom number with a short horizontal line, like you have here on the board. So this is how you represent fraction. Now let's look at the second example. I love to use a pizza to explain this concept a lot. Now you know that pizza normally is split into 8 parts. When you get your pizza, the complete pizza is always split into 8 parts. Now assuming this part, this shaded part here, is taken out of the pizza. This is one slice of the pizza. Assuming that is taken out, let's We have removed it now. Okay, that's the part. This is one part out of 8 parts, because the full pizza, which is one full whole, is shared into 8 parts. In the case of the pizza, 8 parts is equal to one whole. I hope we are following. Look at it. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now the 8 parts all join together to form one whole pizza, right? They all join together to form one whole pizza. Now this shaded part is just one part out of the 8 parts. This shaded part is just one part out of the 8 parts that form the whole pizza. So what do you do? Remember, 8 parts equal to one whole. So if you want to represent this shaded part, if you want to show this shaded part as a fraction, you will say it is just one part out of 8 parts. Okay, is one part out of 8 parts. Assuming we shade 2 parts, it will become 2 out of 8 parts. If we shade 3 parts, it becomes 3 out of 8 parts. Just like that. Okay? Just want to show this. Actually using difference. So this one will be 3 out of 8 parts. So if you shade 1 part, it's 1 out of 8 parts. If it's 2 parts you're taking out of this pizza, it is 2 out of 8 parts. And if it's 3 portions or 3 parts you're taking out, it's 3 out of 8 parts. This is basically how you represent fractions. This is how you represent fractions. A number at the top and a number below, separated by a short horizontal line. Okay? Fraction shows the number of parts that are taken out of a whole. That's just what we've been trying to explain. Fraction shows the number of parts taken out of a whole. So this is a whole pizza. It could be 1 part taken out, it will be 1 out of 8. If it's 2 pieces taken out, 2 pieces of pizza, it will be 2 out of 8. If it's 3 pieces of pizza taken, it will be 3 out of 8. Okay? So that basically is how we represent fraction, which means parts of a whole. Next, we're going to look at fractions on number line. Okay, another way of representing fraction is also using by using number line. That's what we're going to look at now. Remember we said when the thing is whole, when it is complete, it is one whole, just one whole. Remember the case of the rectangle, one full rectangle, and then we split it into 2 parts. And then 1 part became 1 out of 2 parts. The other, the same thing, 1 out of 2 parts. And then we also looked at the pizza. Remember, the pizza is one big whole. The pizza is one big whole, but it's shared into 8 parts. 8 parts. And then if you remove 1 of those parts, it is represented as 1 out of 8 parts. 1 out of 8 parts. If you remove 2, it's 2 out of 8 parts. But remember, everything is one whole. Why do we call numbers fraction? Any number you see that is a fraction, okay, is less than 1. A number that is in the fraction form is less than 1. Okay, so they just represent the part of it that is being looked into or considered, or the part that is taken out, and you write it all over the whole part. And the whole part, remember, combine to form one whole. So it is that mind of everything being one whole that we are using now in representing fractions on number line. So if you draw your number line, unlike when we were considering, when we are considering other things in mathematics or number works, we will mostly use number line to represent numbers from maybe 0 to 10. And then we consider whatever it is we want to consider along the number line. We could also do from 0 to 100. It just depends on what we are trying to look into. So, but in this case, because we are looking at fractions, we are considering fractions. And remember, we said fractions fall between 0 and 1. Fractions are not up to one whole number. So our number line is just going to be between 0 and the number 1, because the fractions fall within this range. They fall inside this place. So we have the number line. This is 0 and this is 1. And right in the middle of this number line is the midpoint, the middle between 0 and 1. And that middle between 0 and 1 is represented as 1 out of 2. Why is it 1 out of 2? Now let's look at the number line again. How many parts do we have? From here to here is 1 part, right? And then from here to here is another part. How many parts do we have from this 0 to 1? We have 2 parts. And that is the 2 that is represented here. From the beginning, from 0 to 1, we have 1 part, and then we have 2 parts. Now, but what we are looking at is 1 out of the 2 parts. When we are looking at any point on the number line, just note that we are looking at the space before that mark. And the space before that mark is just 1 part out of the 2 parts. That's why it is written as 1 over 2. Okay? That's why it is 1 out of 2, because this is the mark we are looking at. And this mark simply represents everything on this end. That's what it represents. So that is why it is 1 out of these 2 parts. I hope it's not confusing. Okay, let's look at the next one. Let me erase this so that we don't get confused. The next one here is still number line showing 0 to 1. Okay. Here we have that the line is shared into 3 equal parts. It is split in 3 equal parts. So that means the whole part, all the parts is 3. Everything that forms the whole is 3 parts. That is 1 part. Let me write this. 1, 2, 3. So you see the 3 parts from 0 to 1. These are the 3 parts. And in between you have the different fractions. Now since it's 3 parts that form the whole, 3 will be under. And then depending on the part you want to look at, if we look at this first line here, we wrote it as 1 out of 3. Why is it 1 out of 3? It's 1 out of 3 because it's looking at the part from here to here only. And that part is just 1 part. Now from this point here to this point is another part, right? And then from this point to this last part is another part. So here is just 1 part out of the 3 parts. 1, 2, 3. So that's why here is represented as 1 out of 3. Now if you take another step forward, you're going to land at, that's where we get to. Okay? So how many parts do we have here? 1, 2. So this end here is represented as 2 parts out of 3 parts. Why? Because it is 2 parts involved. 1, 2. 2 out of 3. 2 out of 3. So the first one is just 1 part out of 3. 1, 2, 2 parts out of 3. 1, 2, 3 would be, if we're going to write anything here, it will be 3 out of 3. And 3 out of 3 is the same as 1 whole. 3 out of 3 parts. So this is 1 out of 3, 2 out of 3, 3 out of 3. I don't want to go into what 3 out of 3 signifies in mathematics, okay? So that you don't start getting confused. But I'm just trying to use this number line to help explain the concept of fraction for you, okay? How you can also use number line to show your fraction. So the last one we're going to consider using number line here is this one. Now you can see we have stretched out our number line so that it can accommodate the tinier fractions we are looking into. Okay, these are smaller bits, so we have to stretch it out so that we have space to represent them. Now if you look at the number line, it's still from 0 to 1. It will always be from 0 to 1 as long as we are looking at fractions. As long as it's fractions we are looking at, the number line will always be from 0 to 1, because between 0 and 1 is where you have the fractions. Okay, so this number line is split or shared into 8 equal parts, just like the number of our pizza. So you have from here to here 1 part, 2 parts, 3 parts, 4 parts, 5 parts, 6 parts, 7 parts, 8 parts. So you have 8 equal parts. Now if you look at this part, it is shown as 1 out of 8, 1 over 8. Why? Because the whole parts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, everything that forms the whole is 8. Okay, I write my 8. All the 8 is what forms the whole, the one whole. Now if you look at this part here, from here to here, this is just 1 part out of the 8 parts. So that part is represented as 1 over 8. It is shown as 1 out of 8. That's how you write it. Okay? If we are looking at the second part up to this part, now look at it. We have 1 part, next 2 parts. 1, 2. So this is shown as 2 out of 8. 2 parts out of 8. If we are looking at this part, for instance, in the middle, let's see. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that is 5 parts out of 8. That's why it is expressed that way, 5 out of 8. So that's how you use your number line. Remember, when you are using number line, it's always between 0 and 1. Okay, that's one part. And then, depending on what you are looking for, depending on the parts that make the whole, you make sure that you split your number line into equal parts. Whatever the number is, it has to be split into that number in equal parts. For instance, here we split into 2 equal parts. Here we split, the line is shared into 3 equal parts. Here it is 8 equal parts. So no matter the number that represents the whole, you must ensure, make sure that you share the number line, which is from 0 to 1, into equal parts. That's what makes your work to be correct or accurate. Okay, so next we're going to look at the different parts of fractions. The different parts of fractions. Now let's look at the fraction we have here on the board, 1 out of 2, which we normally call half. Okay, Normally, fractions, like we mentioned earlier, is represented by two numbers up and down separated by a horizontal line, a short horizontal line in the middle. You write one number at the top, you draw a horizontal line under it, and then you write a number underneath it. So this is how fractions are normally shown. Okay, this is how you normally write fractions. So the number at the top has a name, and it is numerator. That's the name of the number at the top, numerator. Okay, and then the number below is called the denominator. Numerator is the number at the top, and denominator is the number below. Okay, so take note of that. When we explore fractions further, when we look at fractions more, you will see that for a fraction to be a normal or proper fraction, this number below always needs to be bigger than the number on top. Okay, it needs to be bigger than the number on top. But when you have a fraction where the number on top is bigger than the number below, it has a name, and the name shows that it is not supposed to be so. Okay, so let's quickly do a recap of what we learned today. We learned that fraction is part of a whole. Now let me say something quickly before I leave a wrong impression. When we say it's part of a whole, fine. Like I use pizza, I use a rectangle. Okay, we can also have fractions of numbers, something that is more than one. There can also be fraction of it. For example, if there are 6 oranges, and then a child is given these 2 oranges, 2 out of the 6 oranges, right? This 2 is like a fraction of the whole number of oranges. Okay, so you can also have fraction out of everything. It doesn't necessarily have to be one unit, one thing that is combined together, like you have in the rectangle in the pizza case. That is just one unit but split in small halves. It could be a number of things, okay, but whatever is taken out of that whole, out of that total number of things you have, is considered or is seen as a fraction of everything. So for instance, now you have these 6 oranges. So these 6 oranges, and then 2 of it are given to this little child. So you said that the child has 2 out of 6 oranges. So this is the fraction of the oranges that the child is given, 2 out of 6 oranges. This is a fraction. Okay, so assuming you have maybe 3 loaves of bread or three bottles of drink, okay, whichever. Let's use a loaf of bread. It's easier for me to draw. I'm bad at drawing. Okay, you have 3 loaves of bread, and then you give one to your sibling. Okay, this is the one you give to your sibling. So you say that your sibling, the fraction of bread you give to your sibling is 1 out of 3. Okay, so this is just to clarify, because the examples we used, you may misunderstand it and think that it is only when it's, and I know the number line I showed us as example is from 0 to 1, indicating that 1 is the whole and every other thing falls in between. Yes, it does, but also know that when we have amounts of things, a number of things, whatever is taken out of that total number of things is also considered as a fraction of the whole lot or the whole number of things. Like I use this example now, 2 oranges out of 6 oranges. 2 is a fraction of 6. 2 out of 6. Or here you have 3 loaves of bread and you give one to your sibling. It's 1 out of 3. So the portion you give to your sibling is a fraction of 1/3, 1 out of 3 parts. Okay? I hope this is simple enough and it's not confusing. Don't worry, we'll try and see what other aspects of fraction we can consider at this level that will not be too challenging for you. Okay, so we hope to meet again next week. Stay blessed and stay safe.